We want to welcome you to our final 10 questions plus here at UNT, University of North Texas Percussion. This is our Zoom clinic series, and it's been an amazing semester. We started off with Gary Burton and Chick Corea, went on to Steve Gadd, and his teacher John Beck joined us. And then we had Luis Conte, Latin percussion virtuoso, and Chester Thompson joined us for that one as well. And then we had Japanese marimbist Keiko Abe last week. And now, to close us off for the semester, is Roy McCurdy. And we're so honored and privileged to have him with us tonight. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to introduce our faculty because they've all been involved with this session at some level. And they just can't imagine this without them, to be honest. I want to start off in no particular order because they're all pretty amazing. Stockton Helbing is on our drum set faculty, as well as Jose Aponte, who's our Latin master guru and drum set artist. Steve Barnes also teaches drum set for us as well. Puvalar Sriji, I believe, is with us tonight. He's our South Indian master drummer. And Ed Smith, who teaches jazz vibraphone and instructs our gamelan as well. Paul Rennick, for those of you that are involved with DCI, I know his name very well. The top winningest drumline instructor in DCI history. Teaches snare drum and ensembles, and his wife Sandy Rennick teaches marimba here as well. Christopher Dean, orchestral percussion and timpani. Gideon Alawari, our Ghanaian Awe master drummer from teaching African music and African music ensemble. And finally, Quincy Davis, who is an outstanding, incredible drum set instructor. He coordinates our drum set program and is now in his 4th year, and a dear friend and an amazing musician. My name is Mark Ford. I coordinate the percussion program. And tonight, Quincy is going to introduce our guest artist for you, and he's going to lead the questions. Quincy?
All right. Thanks so much, Mark. And it's sad that this is our last session, but it's really a great way to end it with a true master musician, someone who I've been listening to since I was in high school. I can literally remember hearing this song 74 miles away, and it's a tune in 7/4 Cannonball Adderley. And when I heard that, I said, "What is that? What?" And that's the first time I heard an odd meter and the energy that they played with. I said, "Who's that drummer?" And it was nonetheless Mr. Roy McCurdy. So it is truly an honor to have you tonight to share your wisdom and your experiences with us. Mr. McCurdy has played with, I'm just going to read a few names. Count Basie, Gene Ammons, Benny Carter, Kenny Rankin, Art Farmer, Benny Golson and the Jazz Tet, Chuck and Gap Mangione, Sonny Rollins, Horace Silver, Toshiko Akiyoshi, Stanley Turrentine, Dionne Warwick, Herbie Hancock, Joe Henderson, Betty Carter, Sarah Vaughan, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Nancy Wilson, and of course, a lot of us, most of us probably know him for his work with the great Cannonball Adderley and his quintet. That's not the full list. So it just gives you an idea of how busy he's been and how in demand he's been over the course of his full career. And currently he teaches at the Thornton School of Music at USC. And I believe he's been there since 2010. In addition to all that, he's still performing, playing, and making great music with so many incredible musicians still. So let's just give a virtual round of applause for him joining us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
So to start the festivities, Mr. McCurdy, we're going to begin with a student not from Houston. I always want to make him from Houston. He's not from Houston. He's from San Antonio, Texas. And he is a sophomore jazz studies major, Isaac LaVigne.
Hi, hey, Mr. McCurdy. It's an honor to be speaking with you tonight. Thank you so much for your contributions to the world of jazz and music as a whole. So, thank you. I just had a question. It was, I've seen interviews and you talk a lot about how young musicians in this day and age don't necessarily have a certain sound rooted in their head or like how to play or how to approach the jazz style. So I was just wondering, what jazz records did you find yourself playing along to early in your career, and how did that help develop your playing over time?
Well, this is kind of funny, but I never played along to any jazz records. I never did. It's the equipment that we had back there just didn't lend to it. You couldn't hear or anything like that. So what I did is I just listened so much, man. I was always listening to music. I had a friend of mine named Warren Greenlee, who was an alto saxophone player. We grew up together, and him and I spent, hours and hours and hours just listening to music, doing homework at school, doing that, but listening to music, running back to the instrument, trying to play what we heard, trying to figure out myself, trying to figure out what was the sticking this drummer is using, how is he getting this sound and all this thing. So it was a kind of an experimental thing, and Warren and I spent a lot of time playing together to all the things that we heard. So I didn't get a chance to play along with any records, but I listened to a lot of records. I think my first record was a Dizzy Gillespie record, a little 12-inch record. But my household, there was a lot of music going on. My sisters and my cousin were big music fans, and so there was a lot of swing music going on there, a lot of big band music, because there was a lot of dancing and stuff going on in the house. They would roll the rug back and dance, and they would be playing big bands like Erskine Hawkins and Count Basie and Duke Ellington's bands, but they're dancing to all that, And I got a chance to hear all that. My cousin was kind of a drummer; he was a marching band drummer, and I got interested in the drums through that. But just listening to a lot of music, going back and running back to the drums, and Warren and I trying to play this music together. That's how we learned it, We had teachers, but they weren't the kind of teachers that you guys got now. You have guys that are playing, they're out there doing it. They're actually playing. There's no in-between person now. We had teachers from like music stores, who taught us how to play rudiments and different things like that, and that was about it, So everything we learned was learned on our own. But we seem to progress pretty fast. I don't know how that happened, because we did. We progressed pretty fast doing it this way. We formed groups. We played with these small groups. Sometimes we were playing without a bass player, without a piano player, but we had a lot of horns, but we would still play. So we did improve, and to the point that I started playing when I was like 8 years old. I think I hit my first drum set then. By the time I was 16 years old, I was playing with Roy Eldridge, Eddie Cleanhead Vincent, people like that, So I was young. My father had to go with me to the club and stay there while I played. But these guys would come into town as singles, and they would look for a drummer, and then they would always, I was one of the guys that they would call a lot. So I learned that way. It wasn't actually through playing along with the records, but it was listening to a lot of music and trying to emulate what I heard.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. And next we have Denver Nuckolls. He's a master's student in percussion performance from Galax, Virginia.
Galax, close. That was it.
I knew I was going to mess that up.
No, that was close. Nice to meet you, Mr. McCurdy. It's great to speak with you this evening.
Yeah.
So in an earlier interview, You attributed the difference between learning techniques that students have adopted today versus how they were when you were coming up as maybe a reason for a lack of individuality, like between players. So what are some ways that you suggest young musicians can better develop an individual sound or personality on the kit or on any instrument?
Uh, well, you know, I don't, you know, I spent a lot of time outside of the kit doing other things, you know, like studying rudimental drumming and stuff like that. You know, I went to all through high school uh, and studied with Bill Street, who was the principal percussionist for the Eastman School of Music Orchestra. And we spent a lot of time, 2 or 3 days a week, just learning rudiments and things and getting my technique together. And that kind of that learning those kind of things, the rudimental things, and they kind of transferred over to the drum set for me. You know, I was able to adjust and get it over to the drum set. And I, being clean and being able to play those rudiments and play those, the things that he taught me just helped me so much with the drum set itself, you know, getting around the drum set and things like that. So I don't know if this answers your question, but I tell guys, man, to make sure that you study all the fundamentals, you know, make sure your fundamentals are sound, you know, if those are sound, you're going to be okay. I think you're going to be able to be okay if you're going to play your drum set. It's going to transfer over. You know, guys like Philly Joe Jones, they were big students of this, like Stone and different things like that. And they played a lot of rudiments, and you can hear it in their playing, and you can hear the way how they transfer those rudiments and change them around, change the accents around, so they swing their butts off, you know? And that's kind of where I came from. Another background for me was, this is kind of off the path, but I was also a drum corps guy. So I know you have a drum corps guy in there. And I did a lot of marching with some of the DCI stuff in Rochester, New York, with a long time ago with the Grenadiers and then Cavaliers later on, which they changed into that. So that just playing those things in the drum lines, man, helped my hands, and playing on the drum set and getting around the drum set. I mean, it was just amazing, and it was wonderful for me. I know it helped. So those kind of things help, man. You know, along with listening to the music that you're going to play. Even if you're a jazz musician, the other thing is learning how to play all kinds of music. You know, just just fill up, just find out everything, because the more you learn, the more calls you're going to get to do things, you know. I hope that helped a little bit. I'm not sure, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. And we'll move on to another master's student, Jack. I'm going to say your last name wrong, Jack. Kloecker?
Kloecker, right? Yeah.
Kloecker, okay. Jack Kloecker, he's a master's performance, percussion performance from Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
He's also a great videographer and lots of other things. So
Thank you. Hi, Mr. McCurdy. It's great to have you here, by the way.
Thank you.
My question is, since your career is so incredibly diverse, playing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Cannonball Adderley, to many incredible vocalists, and doing a lot of studio work. So for younger drummers, how would you recommend they develop their diversity of styles? Would you recommend spending more time working on a specific style before moving on to other styles? Or what's your process for cultivating just that large array of styles that you're able to handle?
Well, you know, for me, I started when I got to really into playing with different groups and things like that. surprisingly enough, it wasn't really jazz. I was playing a lot of blues, you know? So I developed a lot of blues chops playing in some very strange clubs, you know, you know, but I learned how to play the blues with these blues players. Then you know, I was also playing jazz, playing that developed into jazz too. But I went into the service, into the Air Force, and I was playing with the band there, and we had to play all kinds of music there, all kinds of styles of music. So I just studied all these different kinds of things, even country western. I'm telling you, we had to do a lot of different things. So I would say just learn, you know, all the different styles. What I tell guys is, you know, allot time when you're practicing. You know, sometimes you want to just put it in sections. Say, okay, today I'm going to spend time getting my blues chops together, learning what I have to do in order to play this particular style of music. And then going to another style of music and doing the same thing with that, and then going to the jazz and spending time with that. You know, you don't have to say, okay, I'm gonna just spend all my time here playing jazz for weeks and then go to another section of thing. You know, you just want to learn it all. So just allot yourself a time and then listen to a lot of it. Listen to a lot of different. For me, playing with so many different people, especially with Cannon's band, we got to play a lot of different types of music. So it was kind of easy, you know, to transfer a lot of these things easily, just go from one to the other, you know. But I had spent a lot of time before that doing it. So I would say just give yourself pieces of time where you can just go and play this particular, study this, play this. I'm going to practice this today. And the next day, say, I'm going to practice this today. And then a little bit at a time, you're going to come together with a lot of different things, you know? That's what I did. I spent a lot of time doing it too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mr. McCurdy, I also, and everybody, I just want to make sure we recognize another legend drummer in the house, and my predecessor, and someone who has a lot to do with putting this program on the map. Mr. Ed Soph is here. I don't know if you two have met, but he's here. You want to say something, Ed?
Yeah, it's great to have Roy here in Denton.
Ed, how you doing, man?
I'm fine. I mean, our paths crossed a long time ago.
Yeah, but I'm very familiar with you, man.
I'm very familiar with you too. And Rufus Reed has told me about your times with Nancy and all. So
yes,
great to have you, man.
thank you.
Great to see you. I hope I look as good as you.
Hey, man, I'm just.
No, you're taking care of business big time. That's great, man.
Thank you. I'm kind of covering up my eyes with these glasses. I had cataract surgery, so my eyes are a little puffy. So I'm just covering up them bags under there with his glasses today, man.
You're cool. You're cool. Hey, listen, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah.
It's really important, and you know it is.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Well.
Awesome. So we're gonna move on, and actually, I want to skip Austin for a second. We'll come back to him and move on to Jeffrey Dalton. He's a freshman jazz studies major from Pennsylvania.
Hello, Mr. McCurdy. It's
Hello.
an honor to meet you. So my question for you is, in Cannonball Adderley's album Mercy, 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 live at the club, you are playing a vamp over the A sections all throughout the entire 8-minute song Fun. Mm-hmm. So my question is, how do you keep a vamp like that interesting for that long? Like what goes through your mind? How do you keep it interesting?
Well, you know, it wasn't only me. It was the bass player and Zavanu also playing that figure, you know. So the intensity came from all three of us. You know, for what was going through my mind is just keeping that keeping that figure sharp and cracking, and try to play some kind of fills here and there that was going to keep it going, keep it up, and the intensity that was coming from the other two guys, plus what we were playing, what the rhythm section was playing on top of it, it was easy. It wasn't a hard thing to do, that figure lasted through the A section, but then we had the swing section there too, so we went right back to it,
Mr. McCurdy, I wonder if I can just play maybe a minute or two of that, and
Sure.
other students know exactly what you're talking about. I think that might be cool for them to hear. So I'm going to share my sound. Hopefully this works. Share computer sound. Okay. I think I got it. Okay, here we go. That was a different version. That was from Nat Adderley, right?
Remember Lane, huh? That was the Joe Henderson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You recorded it also with Cannonball, Mercy.
Yeah, exactly. That was the original one. Yeah, right. Cannon with Cannon. Then we did this live concert gig with the Memory Lane with Joe replaced Cannon on there, and it was Nat Adderley's album. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, you could hear that that Joe's all. I mean, Joe was playing the same figure, and the bass player. So we were just trying to lock and then try to play something in between there, and keep it swinging. keep the intensity going,
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, when Cannon came out with that tune, they didn't have a rhythm. They just had a melody. So what they did a lot with us, he would say, "Oh, here's the melody." We go to rehearsal. He said, "Here's the melody I have. Roy, come up with a rhythm." So that's what we came up with, and it seemed to have worked. So that's a bit.
It sounded real fun.
Yeah. There you go.
Awesome. We're going to move on to master student in percussion performance, Robert Chapman. He's from Austin, Texas.
Good evening, Mr. McCurdy. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Sorry, thanks. It's a real honor and pleasure to get to talk to you. I was wondering, you had talked a little bit about studying with William Street out at Eastman, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about not only how his style of playing influenced you technically, like through the rudimental drumming and stuff, but also stylistically, if there was anything that translated from your studies with him to your jazz drumming and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like I said before, we would spend a lot of time with the rudiments, doing a lot of rudimental exercises. We worked out of quite a few books. One of the main books that we worked out was the NARD book. You know that book? It's a National Association of Rudimental Drummers. We would work out of that book and some other things. And he had a book of his own that we would work out of. And, you know, he would just talk about not playing the rudiments. I mean, playing the rudiments straight, but also changing the accents around. And so, you know, the putting the doubles here, different places at the end, in the middle, different things, like if you're playing a double paradiddle, things like that. And he always stressed playing clean. He always stressed playing like about 3 or 4 inches above the drum in the middle at a 90-degree angle, so you'd have everything would be even all the time. You know, almost the same as drum corps thing, the same thing. But we were playing match grip instead of we were playing a traditional grip instead of match grip. Those things all translated for me to jazz drumming, because I use a lot of those rhythms and a lot of those rudiments when I'm playing, you know. So just to get around the drums, and I show some of my students. I always show my students a lot of those different things, the way to utilize them and things like that. He was an amazing person, man. He had the best hands, and he was there for quite a while. I think John Beck took over from him after that, at Eastman. But he had a brother too. They were both in the orchestra. So those are what he does. So we spent that time just rudiments. And I was over there a couple of times a week. And our lesson was supposed to be 45 minutes or so. And they always ran like an hour and a half. We was always up there doing way over time that we were supposed to do, because it was so much fun. And that also helped not only with the drum set, but it also helped with corps when I was playing with corps, you know, because it helped me to get ready for what the drum line was doing there. Drum line wasn't doing anything as fancy as the drum lines are doing now, but we were still burning. So
that's very insightful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to keep it moving with a freshman from Massachusetts in jazz studies, Jackson Beebe.
Hi, Mr. McCurdy. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. The first is, in many of your interviews, you cite Buddy Rich as a big influence on your playing. What aspects of your playing would you say has he had the biggest impact on? And my second question is, how do you think of playing the ride simple conceptually, and how did you develop such a strong ride beat? And was there anyone's ride simple playing that you tried to emulate?
Okay, so let me correct one thing. Buddy, I love Buddy. He wasn't my biggest influence, but I love the way he played. Just because he was just so technically proficient in the drums. I mean, just amazing hands and the way he got around the drums. Say again what you say. I lost my train of thought there when I went to Buddy.
So what aspect of your playing would you say he had the biggest influence on?
Okay. Yeah, you know, just the way, just his cleanliness, the way he played, the clean, the strokes, the speed, all those different things. You know, I tried to work on a lot of those things, but the drummers that really had a lot that were really my biggest influences for me were Kenny Clark, Philly Joe Jones, Art Taylor, Shelly Manne, Stan Levy, you know, all those kind of guys, Elvin Jones. Those are the guys that I listened to a lot, and tried to take things from all the time. So those were my biggest influences. So that was the first part of your question. And the second part, My ride cymbal. Well, it took me a long time, to develop. It changed a lot. When I was playing through high school and playing in the service and playing with the Mangiones, I was playing kind of light, not digging in really a lot, just kind of standard. When I was at the jazz set, it kind of changed a little bit, but we're still playing on the light side, and clean. But it really changed when I joined Sonny Rollins, because Sonny wanted me to dig in a lot. He wanted you to really dig in. I have when I joined Sonny, my first night with him, we were playing out in Los Angeles, and at the end of the night, I thought I was playing, and at the end of the night, he put a letter under my door, my hotel door, and he said, Mr. McCurdy, he says, I am playing my behind off, and you're playing too light. He says, would you please play harder? Sincerely, Sonny Rollins. So, I put away my little light sticks, went up to the studio the next day and got some. We were in LA. I went down to the drum shop, got a bunch of heavier, just a little bit heavier than I was playing. I went back and I really dug in on Sonny that night at the club. And at the end of the night, we went back home. I got another letter under my door, and he said, thank you, sincerely, Sonny Rollins. So that's when my playing started changing with my ride cymbal. I started digging in really hard, playing with more intensity, and I became stronger when I was playing with Sonny, because it was just the three of us. So it was just Sonny, the bass drum, Sonny bass drum. So, I'd look up at the clock and 15 minutes or 20 minutes had passed, and I knew I still had another half an hour or 45 minutes to play on this one tune, So we became really strong, and it was solos, fours, eights, all the whole thing. So by the time I left Sonny, my ride cymbal had really changed from chink-a-tink, 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 chink-a-tink to just straight and little dancing, to when I went with Cannon, then it really became intense, because he wanted you to really play intense. So you could hear some of that stuff on the records. We were laying into it. I had also got to the point where I could develop the crack on the snare drum that I wanted to have, that pop, and the dancing with the intensity. And I was also playing with the tip, but on the side of the stick sometime too. So it was a very intense kind of thing. So it changed the whole time. I never tried to work on, I never thought about, am I going to play the cymbal? Am I going to spread it out and play, or am I going to play this part of the beat, or am I going to play I never played it. It just was a natural thing. I just played natural the way my hand fell, and I developed it from there. I know a lot of the kids at school, they come in and they said, listen, I'm working on playing my cymbal this way, and I want this space, or I want, they want to change it around. I said, just play it natural, whatever would be natural for you. When it falls on that cymbal, when that hand falls, get that natural feel. So they did, a lot of them did, and their playing changed, and it sounded wonderful, So that's the way I went, and it stayed that way. My cymbals playing stayed that way all the way through Cannon's band. I must say though that I was always thinking, I wonder if this is cool, if this is right, if it's sounding good. I always kind of had that in my head. And then later on, I got to the point where I got the confidence, and I didn't even think about that anymore. You just could sit down and play, you know. You got all that funny stuff out your head, you know, whether you're playing right or if you're playing wrong. So that's for me. That's how my cymbal. And then when I joined other people, like after Cannon, it was a lot of things like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. There's Kenny Rankin. It was blues, John Mayall. It was Sarah Vaughan, there's Ella. There was a whole bunch of, so your cymbal, you know, my cymbal all stayed the same, but it wasn't as intense as it was. I pulled back. It wasn't as tense as it was when I was with Cannon. And I pulled back, but tried to keep the intensity going. I hope that helped you a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Also, Mr. McCurdy, I noticed, I don't know if you still do, but I saw in one photo you were using nylon tips. Is that something that were you using nylon tips for a long time, or was it just a brief moment?
No, for about a week and a half, man. I used to play with those nylon tips. I wanted to try it one time when I was playing with Cannons, when I was playing with Sonny, actually, I think. And I mean, before we got through half the tune, the tips were popped off. You know, they wouldn't stay, you know, they would just pop off. And I just went back to wood. I said, that's it. You know, I looked down, it would be no tip on the stick anymore, you know, we playing so hard, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to move on, and we're going to revisit a question by a first-year grad student in the jazz department from Tampa, Florida. This is Austin Crawford. He has two parts to his question.
Hi, Mr. McCurdy. It's
Hi.
a pleasure to meet you and talk with you.
Yeah.
So the first part, it's my question. Being that I'm from Tampa, Florida, Cannonball Adderley was one of the first jazz musicians that I discovered.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with his music. So can you speak about any memorable gigs or moments that come to mind when you think of your time with him and his brother, Nat?
Well, let me see. I think one of the most memorable times was when we first went to Brazil with Cannon, you know, and the reception there for the band was just incredible. You know, we played concerts there, but the musicians all came out, and we had these incredible parties, and we used to hang, after the concerts, we used to hang at Joe Beam's house. He had this apartment or house where we used to go to all the time, and they'd have these sessions that would go on till early in the morning, and I got to meet people like Georgie Bean and Down Romano, you know, Milton Nascimento, all these different folks that were coming up for these sessions and hanging out with the band and wouldn't let us go to sleep at night, you know. They would keep us up forever. So going there and playing and jamming with these guys and getting to know these guys and listening to this incredible music and then playing our music too, it was just so special, you know, to do that with that band, especially with Cannon. They loved it. And it was the same kind of thing in Argentina. We went all through South America, but Argentina stood out the same way for us, for me. We did a lot of concerts for the upper class in Argentina, but they weren't letting the musicians in, or, you know, any of the regular people in, but especially the musicians. So Cannon decided he wanted to go and do a concert at the Musicians Union in Argentina, and we did that for all the great musicians there. It was an incredible, man. And when we finished, all these grown men, they were just so happy. I mean, they had tears and stuff were rapping. They said, "You guys came and played for us, you know, instead of the other people, you know." So it was a beautiful moment. And they stayed with us the whole time we were in Argentina, all the way to the airport, man. And it was so emotional. Japan was the same way. The people would greet you in Japan the same way. So those were really, really special moments for me with I mean, I was with Cannon for 11 years. We had a lot of really great times, but those are some of the things that really stood out for me. There was other things, but those were some of the main things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The second part of my question is, you've played with some incredible vocalists like Nancy Wilson and Betty Carter. So what advice can you give to drummers on how to approach playing with vocalists without underplaying, but still allowing your personality to come out of the drums?
Right.
Mr. McCurdy,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have someone who might actually have some experience playing with a wonderful vocalist and yourself, who might want to share some thoughts.
Uh-huh.
This Mr. John Clayton decided to join us and share his thoughts.
Hey, John.
Roy, how are you doing, bro?
How are you, man?
Man, it's great to see you. And it's fascinating to hear you talk about all these things that I actually experienced, you know, like,
Yes.
and it makes such sense that, for instance, you're talking about how you just let your ride pattern be natural.
Right.
And as you were talking, I thought, damn, that's why. That explains it. That's why it's just so natural to play with you. I never have to, you know, you guys can't relate to this, but I got to tell you, playing with Roy McCurdy, you don't have to think about the groove. You don't have to think about the beat. You're not going, oh, am I on top of it? Am I behind? Am I in the middle? You just play, because what he does is so natural. You just put on his shoes, fit right in. So it was really, we never talked about that. So it was really great to hear you explain to me why it feels so good to play with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we always meshed.
Yep.
We always meshed. It was always beautiful, man. Always.
Yeah.
Can I butt in really quick and just make sure that everyone knows who you are, John? Of course, I know it's such an honor to have you join us and share your thoughts. I've known John for I don't know how long, 15, a long 20 years maybe, and had the great fortune of sharing the bandstand with him and his brother Jeff Clayton and his son Gerald Clayton. And I just thought about some people who, you know, I know that you've played with, Mr. McCurdy, and talked to Jeff Hamilton. He said, "Oh, you should talk to John Clayton." John Clayton is world-renowned bassist who has played with everybody, including Diana Krall, Nancy Wilson, Gene Harris, and so many greats. Basie.
Quincy Davis.
What's that?
Quincy Davis. Brad Leali, yeah, all y'all.
Clayton Hamilton Orchestra.
Yes.
Thank you, Quincy. But playing with Roy McCurdy, I can go on and on and on about the grooves, the smiles that I experienced playing with Roy. Because I also had, you know, like you guys are doing, I try to get some stories from him. You know, what was it like? Cannonball was my hero, and I grew up playing along with Roy McCurdy before I actually got to play with Roy McCurdy. Because my brother and I used to always play to those Cannonball records. You know, I knew every note, every beat on those records. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's great, man. I'm really happy how lucky all of you guys are to have Roy McCurdy with you in this intimate way and share who he is with you. That was a very good move.
Thank you. Thank you.
Man.
So what was the second part of your question?
It was, what advice can you give drummers on how to approach with playing with vocalists without underplaying and still allowing their personality to come out?
Well, I tell you what I do. I always did it, and you know, it works for me. I would always ask the vocalist when I know, you know, if I was first joining them, what do you want to hear from me? You know, what do you like to hear from the drummer? Do you want me to lay back? Do you want me to play like me? You know, what do you want? And most of the times, I mean, just all the time, they'll tell you what they want to hear. You know, vocalists are very outspoken, so they'll tell you what they want to hear, you know? So when I was playing with Betty Carter, Betty said, just swing your butt off, man. Don't worry about me. I'm like a horn. She said, just play what you play. You know, don't hold back. So that's what we did, you know? Uh, when I was playing with Nancy, Nancy would say, you know, just play with intensity, you know, play like you play, just don't cover me up, you know? So that gives me a clue of how to play with her, you know? Ella said, well, I want you to play like a big band approach. And I said, oh, what is that? You know, she wanted me to play with a small group like a big band approach, you know? So she wanted me to play like big band kind of licks and fills in between her and when I was playing with her, you know? So that was cool. Playing with Carmen McRae was the same thing. She would say, just swing, man, just swing, baby. Just go ahead and swing, you know, don't worry about anything, you know? So, you know, there's a lot of different people, and I love playing with all the guys, Joe Williams and them, all those Billy Eckstein, those guys, Mark Murphy, those guys just wanted you to swing. They didn't care. They didn't want you to hold back. They want you to play with them and play, you know, play the same way you played behind the horns. They want you to do it. So I think this, if you just ask, you know, instead of trying to guess what to do, ask, they'll tell you. And then you can adjust from there, you know? And that's what I did.
I wonder if, Mr. Clayton, if you could share any stories or memories that you have playing with Nancy Wilson or any other people and Mr. McCurdy.
Well, actually, I talked more to and listened more to Roy McCurdy than I did with Nancy in terms of the musical direction. Because Roy would, you know, Roy, you would always help me, look at me, help me, tell me about the groove or the vibe of a song, you know. And that was always important to me. I mean, I could get the changes from, because when I was filling in for John B, who had a TV gig. So he was for oh man, how long was that? A year or two, something?
Yeah, he was there a couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
Arsenio Hall.
Arsenio Hall, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, you know, I had a lot of opportunities to play, but so in terms of the harmonic stuff, I could get that if I had questions from Biff Hannon. Remember Biff?
Yes.
So he was playing piano. Funny guy. He was playing piano with Nancy at the time. So, you know, he could help me there, but it was just basically focusing on the groove, number one. Well, focusing on Nancy and focusing on the groove, because I knew most of the songs.
Yeah.
And like I said, Roy would always help me with that.
And it was always so comfortable, man. Playing. It was effortless, you know.
Yeah. Oh, likewise. Like, you know, I had to say, as a bass player, I can name on one hand the drummers that I don't have to think about when I play with them. Don't have to think about adjusting where Roy McCurdy, Jeff Hamilton, Lewis Nash. I'm leaving another important one out, but anyway, you know, and of course now you can add to that list people that I've been able to explore with more, like Quincy Davis. You know, we had a chance to play together and you know, adjust. And as a bass player, it's a joy when I can just find out, oh, Roy McCurdy's on the gig. Great, no thoughts. Don't have to worry about what's this going to be like.
Yeah, that's the best thing. If you can, when you go to a gig and you find out who your rhythm section partners are, and you know if a certain names come up, it's going to really be cool. You can just relax for the rest of the night. You know.
Yeah,
that's the best thing.
That's true. Thank you, Quincy. I'm not going to hog any more of this time. This is Roy McCurdy time, bro.
Well, thanks so much for he's in the middle of an appointment. Mr. Clayton's probably the hardest working, busiest head in the show business. So thanks for
a little bit lazy right now, but thank you.
Thank you so much, and talk to you very soon. And, we'll continue with the questions. We just have a couple more. Let's see. So next we have a junior from St. Louis, jazz major, Theodore Cook.
Hello, Mr. McCurdy.
Hi.
Thank you for taking the time to let us pick your brain a little bit. And my question is about leadership and mindset. It's phrased like this: how do you maintain, or how did you develop a balance between this level of self-criticism you need to become a better player, and then the confidence that is required to play with conviction and belief on the bandstand?
Yeah, it's strange as it seems. I played for a lot of people, and for several years, man, I thought I was my own worst critic. I was always thinking, "Am I playing the right thing at the right time here?" I was always second guessing myself, even though I was playing, but I was always kind of second guessing myself. But I think what happens is you come to a point where for me, it just changed. I came to a point where, bam, I was playing consistently all the time. All the time. I didn't have to think about, is it going to be consistent tonight and not going to be consistent the next night? But it came to that point where it was consistent all the time. And I think that happened when I was with, it happened when I was with Cannon, so once I felt that consistency coming, it came to that point where I was that confident. I didn't think about anything anymore. I just thought about the swinging and stuff like that. So I think it's just going to have to develop. I do you think about, do you criticize yourself when you're playing, or think about your self-criticism?
Try not to during performance as much as during practice. But.
Yeah. And mine used to go into like performance. I would think about it during performance, or in between performance. It was, the level was high, but I would still be thinking about it. So I don't know. And then, for me, it was like levels. Sometimes you would get to playing, and you'd get to this point where it was nothing happening for a week or two, maybe a week or 2 weeks, and it seems like you were in the same place, playing the same thing, And then all of a sudden, bam, you go in one night and it's changed. You hit another level, and I think it's just that plateau where you're just moving up, and you just have to wait in that little part there before that stuff changes and you're right there again. So you move up another level, and your confidence builds from that. I've been on the bandstand. I mean, this sounds funny, but I've been on the bandstand where, especially with Cannon's band, man, where things were just swinging so much, man, that you just feel like you're standing outside of yourself looking at it. I don't know, you know what I'm talking about? I mean, you just feel, you just say, damn, I'm looking, that stuff is really happening. I'm standing out here looking at it, and it's just burning, that's a great level to be in, and I've asked guys about that, and they said, and some of them told me, yeah, I've felt that. I've felt that a lot. I mean, every once in a while, some guys said, no, I haven't felt that yet. Well, wait till you do. So yeah, it's just a matter of your confidence builds, man. Your self-criticism. I mean, the whole thing. I've gone through the whole thing. I hope that answers your question there.
That's great. I think we all deal with that.
You did.
And I think something that gets taken for granted or overlooked is the fact that you guys were playing so much compared to now. Even people who are working now aren't playing as much as bands back then. So that, as you said, your confidence built probably with the amount of time that you're spending playing together.
Yeah. Well, here's what would happen is we would leave New York. We'd work all the way across country. Each club was either a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks in each place. We'd work all the way across country to California. doing that. And then we go up to Canada, we're all the way up to Vancouver. Then we come all the way back, work all the way back. We were working all the time, just 6 nights, 7 nights a week, one night off, or a couple of nights to get to the next gig. First we started driving, then we started flying. And it was amazing. I mean, you reach such a level of playing like that, and playing with the same guys all the time. It's an amazing thing. And another thing that's important, back then we were playing with your own instrument all the time. I wasn't going into the town where you had to say, oh, what's the drums going to be like? I knew what the drums are going to be because I had my own drums every night. We traveled with those, Now it was kind of different. You never know what the instrument's going to be unless the company will put the instrument in the club for you, so that was a lot of work, and we worked all that. I moved out to California in 1972, and I was out here for almost 6 months before I ever went into a jazz club, because we were working so much that when I came home, that's all I did was stay home, hung with my wife, my kids, watched TV, did things. And when we were in a couple of weeks, a week or so later, we were back on the road again. Until one night, a guy came over to the house and said, "Come on, Roy, let's go out. I want you to take you to this club called Dante's." I said, "Where's that?" I didn't even know where it was because we were working so much, But that's how it was, and you got the chance to develop your skill that way, man, and check yourself out and find out how you're improving and the levels that you're hitting, and that steady work is an amazing thing. Now it's different, it's much different, it's way less, And then after we came back from going from California to Canada and all the way back, we'd be off for a week. Then we go to Europe and do the same thing. Then we come back from there, and then we go to Asia and do the same thing. And then we come back and we'd be ready to do the States again, So that's how much work it was. I have some schedules at home up in my studio over here. They're just amazing how much is on those itineraries. It's just unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's how much work it was for everybody. I mean, especially if you were with an organized group, and I was lucky enough to be with organized groups, so yeah.
Wow. Great. We're gonna move on, and so we have a sophomore, Sophia Saunte, who's she's a performance major from Mesquite, Texas. There's a couple questions, important questions to ask you, actually.
Hello. Hi, Mr. McCurdy. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, thank you.
That's great. Well, these are kind of, I guess, more of a personal kind of thing, not really a technical drum aspect or musical aspect. These, I was wondering if you would like to share any experiences with racism during your musical career, and if so, how did you deal with it and use those negative experiences to motivate you as a better musician or a person? And I guess the second half of the question was if you have any advice for music students of color, especially our Black friends who are dealing with these problems today.
Racism in the 60s was in 70s and was in 50s. It was when I was playing was pretty prevalent. There was a lot of it going on. I must say that I never experienced any racism amongst my fellow musicians. It seemed like the musicians, being artists, were always very cool. All the racism that we ran into was separate from that, like during travel and stuff like that. So we did a lot of traveling in the South. you know, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida. I mean, we went through a lot of it. And at first we were driving a lot. So we were driving through a lot of these places. And, you know, we in Louisiana, and we could play at the clubs and things, but you weren't allowed to, they didn't want you to mingle in the clubs after you got off the bandstand. So they wanted you to either to stay in the back room or things like that. You weren't, eating was a problem. You couldn't eat in restaurants, so you had to either go into the Black community to find food, or you'd have to have a promoter or one of the white promoters or one of the white musicians go and pick you up food and bring it out to the car for you, things like that. Hotels were only Black hotels only. You know, Texas was one of the places where I first ran into it. This is before I was playing, I was in the service, but Texas was really strict. I was in Big Springs, Texas, and it was the first place I ever saw 3 water fountains and 6 bathrooms, you know, and it was like Black, white, and Mexican, you know. And so, you know, we ran into things like that. But, you know, and the funny thing about Texas was, I mean, there's, I guess other places were like that, had places, but Texas, we knew a lot of people in Big Springs, and you couldn't hang out with them. You had to be careful, and, you know, you had to sit in the balcony of the theaters, and you couldn't eat in certain places. But you could drive to Mexico and see these same people, and you'd be hanging out and partying with them the whole time, man. And, you know, it's just, but as soon as you back across that border, it was a whole thing again, you know? So we ran into a lot of that. Fortunately, you know, we learned to deal with it, and we watched it for a while, watched it, and I watched it change, and it started changing. I remember going to Atlanta and watching things change. I remember you couldn't swim in the pool. Then we came back a year or so later, and you were able to swim in the pool. I remember going into New Orleans and playing Al Hurt's clubs, and walking down the street in the French Quarter, and those girly clubs, they got the guys standing out in front, and they would close the doors when you walk by, so you couldn't see inside. You know, now if you walk down there, they're trying to drag you in. You know, I remember playing at Al's and going to hang out into one of the other clubs with the Cannon and some of the other guys, and sitting at the bar and being tapped on the shoulder by Vice Squad saying, "Hey, you can't sit here. You have to go over there and stand there, but you can't sit in this bar, especially if you sit next to a lady. So you can't do that." So, I mean, there's a lot of restrictions and things that we had to get through, and you know, we had to figure out how to handle it as men and still keep your dignity, you know? So, and still deal with playing the music, you know? So we did, that's what happened. Today, you know, I would tell the Black brothers and sisters that, you know, I would tell them the same thing that I tell my sons and things, you know, just if you run across situations like that, you know, try to keep your calm and be cool. And, you know, if you run across a situation with civilians, do the same thing. Keep your dignity. If you run across situations with police and things, or seem to be kind of crazy right now, you know, there's certain things that Black fathers tell their sons, ways to act if when you run into these different situations. And I would tell the same thing to the Black brothers and sisters if they haven't already heard it from their families. I'm sure there's a standard conversation that goes on in mostly all Black families now. days to deal with what's going on. Fortunately, hopefully, this will change back to a little better things maybe after November. We'll see. See what happens. So those were some of the things that we dealt with. I hope that answers some of the things that you were asking about.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Great question, Sophia. Thanks for asking that. So we just have a couple more questions. William O'Rourke is from San Antonio, Texas, and he's a jazz major, his third-ish year. What's your question, Will?
Yes. Hello, Mr. McCurdy. Man, it's an honor to be speaking with you today. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
I asked this question actually last week to Luis Conte, and I'm really curious about asking this to more musicians in the future. I'd really like to know what's one thing you've learned in your career that you wish you would have known when you started your career?
Well, I think that a couple of things. I think that I would have probably been more serious about studying piano. You know, I think I was taking lessons when I was a kid, but drums always took over, and I never could get interested. I even, you know, to the point where I wanted to keep it up. And now I think that was probably a big mistake. And I wish I had kept that up. And I wish I had studied theory and writing and things like that, which we didn't have any music schools, any schools that were teaching music like you guys are in now. You know, a lot of the schools were frowning on jazz programs at that time. So we didn't get the chance to do that, but I wish I had because I did take piano, and I know a lot of guys now drummers and things who just play wonderful. They can play drums, they can play piano. I have some assistant teachers when I go out and do summer school things. And all these guys, man, they all know their theory up and down, and all of them can play another instrument. And piano is probably the main one. And some of them play so good that, you know, the only thing they need is a bass and drummer to play with them, even though. So that's one of the things I wish I had done. And you know, it would have probably opened up a lot of different channels, you know, as far as writing and things are concerned, you know.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I also had just a follow-up question, because we've been talking about, you know, diversity in playing and your different styles of music that you've played with an artist. So I was curious if you could just talk about your time working with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and also the Pointer Sisters.
Mm-hmm. Well, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that was after Cannon passed. I was sitting home for a while, and Bobby Columbi, which was the drummer and one of the founders of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, called and said, "Roy, would you like to come and, you know, we'd love to have you come and join this group. How would you feel about it?" You know, and I was really kind of familiar. I loved their music and everything, and I said, "Well, yeah, I would love to do that." I felt that I was prepared to do it because of all the different kinds of music that I had played, especially the funk music and stuff we had been playing with Cannon and all those different kind of people. So, you know, and the other thing is the band of Blood, Sweat, and Tears was all jazz musicians. You know, everybody in there was a jazz musician. You know, was some of the guys that were in the band with me were Mike Stern, Larry Willis was playing piano, you know, Tony Kloecker, Dave Bargeron. So there was a whole bunch all of them were jazz musicians. So we were all playing rock, you know, and it was great. I did one album with them called Brand New Day, which was really nice. The Pointer Sisters was the same thing. More funk, you know, and I really enjoyed doing that with them. They did a lot of high-end clubs and things in Vegas and things like that. And you know, the music wasn't too much different than Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Was just more of a funkier feel, you know. And so I had a good time with both of them. The girls were good, were great, you know. It's a little different atmosphere and feeling than the jazz atmosphere. But I must say that playing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, whoa, I was never treated so good. I mean, we was treated just amazingly good. I mean, it was just, they had so much money, man. It was amazing. You know, you didn't have to do anything. It was the first time I ever had a drum tech. You know, I didn't have to do anything, didn't have to set up nothing, just come and sit down. You know, didn't have to tear nothing down. You didn't have to worry about my bags at the airport. They just give you a ticket. They come to your house and pick up your stuff. It was just, everything was first class, you know? So, and they paid well, you know? So that was great. There was a lot of perks, a lot of stuff they gave you. You got a lot of equipment and electronics and everything. They were always trying to give you something. So it was a different thing than jazz, where a lot of times you're struggling, you know, but the rock guys didn't seem to be that struggling that much. They were having a good time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mr. McCurdy, we're a little bit over the time that we told you. Do you have a few more minutes there's 2 more questions?
Sure.
I'll keep you though, if you have to go, I understand.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so just 2 more questions. The next question is by James Merritt, who's a junior jazz drum set major from, I can get James now, Waxahachie, Texas.
Yeah, that's right. Hello, Mr. Curdy. It's good to have you tonight. Hope you're doing well. It's an honor to be speaking with you, sir.
Thank you.
So you have recorded, I believe, over 200 albums. And so I think it goes without saying that you have a lot of experience in that kind of thing. So I was wondering if you had any advice for young drummers such as myself who are really interested in getting into studio and session work.
Well, you know, I didn't do a lot of stuff. I just did a portion of studio work, you know, but I think the main thing is be a great reader. That's the first thing. You have to be able to read everything, you know, and you have to play a lot of different types of music in a lot of different types of ways. So I think you should have some classical training on drums, you know, classical snare, all those kind of things you have to play, and as well as drum set. And you know, and I think that's probably it. You know, it's being reliable and on time, you know, is goes a long way. Not only that for studio musicians, but for everything. I'll tell you, you got time for a quick story? I'll tell you this. I was doing this movie at Warner Brothers. I was called to do this movie, and I walked in, my drums were delivered, and I walked into this huge studio, and there was string players forever, horn players forever. I mean, the whole room of the studio was just full of musicians, and they put me in this booth, and I was in there setting up, jazz guy setting up, putting my things together, and all of a sudden I heard, let me make the sound. I got to get something to make the sound. I heard, and I looked up, and I was still putting my screw and my cymbals on, you know, and trying to adjust and stuff. And I heard that sound, and I looked up, and the conductor was like this, saying, getting ready to hit the downbeat. And he hit it, you know, and I wasn't ready. I was just still setting up. And he said, drummer, we're all waiting for you. So I found out, at that time, you can't be a jazz musician in the studio, I mean, the jazz mentality, you better be on time, set up real early and wait for that, because they're hitting exactly on time, You know how we go in and we set up and we hang out for a few minutes before we play. They're hitting, they say 10 o'clock, you hitting, bam. So that taught me a lesson. So from when I got called again, listen, I was there 45 minutes early. I was sitting around. My stuff was set up, waiting, So that was a little story about my first gig in the studio doing this movie, But just be on time. Make sure that you're covered. Your knowledge is, make sure that you're ready for all the different things that you're going to have to do. And you may want to learn, the mallet instruments too. Instead of other than the drums, because you may have to switch off doing different things. It's almost like doing a symphony band. So I've gone in and had to play. Had to play bass drum, had to play snare drum, different things, So.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. And I'm going to make an audible on account of, you've kind of spoken to the last question by our master students, Brian Keith. And the reason is because we have a Cannonball Adderley fanatic joining us, and I wouldn't hear the last of it if I didn't let him ask his question. Every time you said the word cannon, and Cannonball. So I'm going to let my colleague and great friend Brad Leali ask his question, and this is going to be our last question for the night.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, sir. I was content with just listening. I play saxophone, so I've been listening to you for years. In fact, I was listening to Money in the Pocket this morning.
I
mean, it's just so beautiful. Oh, anyway, my question was, just to move forward, is you've been talking about, like, you ask vocalists what they're looking for, and people, what are you looking for? What do you look for in the front man? Like, if you were going to, like, when you form your own bands, what do you look for in the people that you're playing with?
I like the horn players. I like the rhythmic horn players. They just seem to mesh with me, So when I'm playing, the guys that play rhythmic figures and things like that. But on the other end, I love guys who play beautifully and lyrical. I love all that too, So I look for guys who can play with a lot of fire, but also can play with a lot of passion, and especially in the horn players and piano players, So those are my favorite kind of people, That was one of the reasons I loved playing with Cannon so much. He was such a rhythmic player, man. He's just, the rhythm, you could just feel that rhythm and you could just play with it, Nat was like that too, but you could just play with his whole body. I mean, it just gave off all that rhythm. So it was so easy to play with. And that's what the things I look for in horn players when I take bands out and we work around here, And I have favorite guys that I like to play with. And I try to get those guys all the time, Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was you get a kind of a perspective on being a drummer and being a rhythm section guy. You're always in the back, so you get to see these guys from the back, And when I was playing with Cannon and Nat, they were like, their movements were like synchronized, you know. So their behinds would be going the same, or their feet would be tapping the same, or their movements would be set. I guess because they were brothers. I mean, but it was exactly the same all the time. It was so funny to watch in the back, you know, when they were playing together. But that's what made it fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, Mr. McCurdy, this has been really incredible and a great way to end this series. Thank you so much for just all the music that you've shared and created over the last, you know, bunch of decades and continue to create. I know I'm motivated and inspired, and I know everybody who's on this call will be and is. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and yeah, I hope to actually see you and meet you in person someday.
Yeah, I hope so. If you get out this way, please call. I think you have the number.
I do.
Yeah, come on over and hang, and we'll practice some, man.
I'd love that. I'd love
it. Yeah. Thank you guys. It was so much fun, man. I really enjoyed that. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, Roy, it's been such a pleasure. We feel like we've had royalty with us this evening, and really been listening to you for all my life, you know, and I learned so much just because of you coming on this week, doing the reading and listening before you came to talk with us. And I know the students have done the same, and I think we've all grown through your experience and through your eyes, and your inspiration tonight has been really special. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and see you on the next Zoom series, if not in person sometime. But thank you.
For sure.
Stay safe out there.